I really don't give a crap what anybody says. I really don't. On this Q&A, what do I think of Repro and Customs? How to identify weapons and accessories properly? What toys would I save in a fire? And what are Gatekeeper Collectors? All this and more get answered, so let's go. Welcome back to Vintage Q&A, where you leave your questions and I try my hardest to answer them. Even if I have to research to the ends of the earth to find the answers, I'll try to do that. So if you want to ask any questions, just leave them down there in the comments and I'll answer it on a future episode. And the first question comes from EMS3. What vintage Star Wars figures would you like for Kenner to have made back in the day that weren't manufactured? Keep up the great channel. Thanks, EMS3, and I'm glad you're digging the content. I wish we'd have gotten an Ula in 1983, and I know there were a lot of characters from Jabba's Palace made, but if you would have given us Ula instead of like a Barada, that would have been rad. And at number 4, so we got the Max Rebo band for Jabba's Palace, right? I think you know where I'm going with this. It would have been cool to get a figure pack of the Cantina band. And I know we got that band later on for the Hasbro versions, but we're talking about the Kenner versions, obviously. And it would have been cool if it came with the Power of the Force to get a coin of the band. I think that coin would have been a collector's item right now. And the coin would read, the Cantina band that kept smugglers and scoundrels entertained in Mos Eisley. And if anybody out there makes customs, please make me one of those. The number 3 figure I wish they would have made, I wish we would have gotten a security soldier from the Tantive 4. It's like the antithesis of the Imperial Gunner, actually, just with no face shield. And my number 2 figure, Grand Moff Tarkin. I think this figure is on every collector's wish list. And no explanation as to why. Every diorama needs him. Every collection needs him. That case back there is empty because I do not have a Tarkin. I know there's customs out there made. I wish Kenner would have done it. And my number 1 figure that I wish that Kenner would have made back in the day, and you can say this one with me at the same time because it's probably yours too. 1, 2, 3. Slave Leia, or Metal Bikini Leia, or Hutt Slayer, whatever you want to call her. I do have one that is fan-made, but yeah, I wish that we would have got that figure back in the day, 1983, 1984, 1985 would have been nice, because then we would have gotten a Metal Bikini coin. And a special mention, I wish we would have gotten a mouse droid that came as an accessory with the Death Star droid. That would have been rad. And Shane asks, are we ever going to see a Padawan Collector and 5 Idiots Talking Toys crossover? And for those of you who don't know the 5 Idiots, don't let the name fool you. They are masters of Star Wars vintage, and their channel is fun to watch. So when I first started my channel, they had me on, which was cool of them because no one else knew that I existed except for them. And anytime you guys want to come on this channel or have me on your channel, dudes, I'm down. So Tim asks, would I collect the vintage customs? And the answer is hell yes. I already showed you my Slave Leia, and I also have a bunch of customs from a company called the Neck 17. And these are super cool because they fill in the gaps, and it's cool for diorama making and scene building or toy photography. So yes, I am all about vintage customs. Plus, I love seeing how creative that some people can get. Brett asks, approximately how many carded figures were manufactured for each of the major lines of the vintage figures, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and Power of the Force? I'm talking total figures, not characters. And according to Swansea University, home of the Belching Beavers, I'm just kidding, I don't know what their mascot is. The first run of Star Wars toys based on the first movie, they did 42 million figures. And by the end of the Power of the Force, they sold a total of 250 million figures. And we know they increased volume for each toy line, so we can guess that they doubled the output for Empire at 84 million, and they most likely made 100 million output for the Return of the Jedi and scaled back for the Power of the Force maybe to 20 to 40 million. And that would be my fair guesstimate, not knowing the exact sales distribution numbers or the retail numbers. Frack asks, what would be your favorite value not important to run out the door with you in case of a disaster? What would you give away tomorrow? That is a super hard question. So if I did think about value, it would be my Vattel Cape Jawa, because I could sell that figure and buy a whole lot of action figures, hopefully to almost replenish that case. And, knock on wood, I hope a disaster never happens. I am prepared. I do have insurance. I do have strategies in place in case any disasters do happen, but they're called disasters for a reason. A lot of the times you don't know that they're coming. So yes, sentimental value. And my final answer would be either my Luke X-Wing, because that was the first ever Star Wars figure that my parents got me. And I believe they got that for me in 1980. I was only 3 years old. Or it would be my Princess Leia in combat poncho, because that was the last figure that my mother bought for me. I was in college, by the way, but she went to a comic book shop and she bought me the Endor Leia, and she gave it to me as a stocking stuffer one Christmas when I came home. So that will always be my number one favorite figure. So yeah, let's go with the Endor Leia. A close second would be my X-Wing Luke, just because it's my original. And inside my bug out bag for my disaster kit, it's going to be my Vanlocave Jawa. And what figure would I give away tomorrow? So I guess that means what's the figure I can care less about? Well, I dig them all. So that's a really hard question, but I mean, they're all part of the Kenner Star Wars history, and they're all part of that vintage collection. You can't break up the set. But if I had to, because you're asking that question, if I can buy one that's in the most mint of condition, I would still probably give away the Rebel Soldier from Hoth. I'm sorry, Rebel Soldier, but I gotta pick one. John says, there is still some difference of opinion on which source materials are best to use and on how to tell which version of each accessory you have found. For example, the Imperial Blaster that came with so many different figures is not always the same, depending on which figure it came with, in which years, from which factories, etc. Great question, and you are totally right, John. That is one of the accessories that has a lot of debate over which one's the right one. And really, to be honest, the real Bible in this case, the real source, are the card backs. If you can give an example of that particular accessory coming inside a blister, a sealed blister, there's your proof right there. You don't need any websites. You can show that to anybody, and all you have to do is prove that the adhesive has never been taken off because it was carded that way in the factory. Even if it was an error, you find one that is one of one that proves that that blaster came with that figure. But a lot of times we don't have access to that because we do not all have the carded figures. And the two sites that I go to more often than not for accessory research, one is the Imperial Gunnery and the other is the Variant Villain. But one resource that is new on the scene is the book from Red 5 Design that has become my new Bible. And I did a whole review with both of them. If you want to check out that episode, I'll leave it down there in the description. If you will, to look up the reference photos on this, they did a ton of research and they have a ton of reference photos inside that book. And they also talked to a ton of what I would call experts in the field of vintage Star Wars collecting. So I would really check out that book, and you can visit their website. I do have the book and I'm getting the second volume. And when that volume comes out, I'm going to do a full review of that. And also I would love to have the guys from Red 5 Design come back on the show and we'll talk about what it took to get volume 2 out. Liz Marty Joe asks, and Liz is also a member and supporter of this channel by her becoming a YouTube member. So if you want to become a member yourself, there's a join button down there. And by doing that, you support this channel and make these videos possible. So thank you very much, Liz Marty Joe. If you got vintage figures that are missing weapons/accessories and you choose to buy repro in good quality, will this still increase the value on that figure a little bit? And if you choose to complement a figure by making your own cloaks or restore a figure, does it lose value even if you fix the figure to be almost as good as new? I know that this increases the value of a lot of other vintage stuff, but maybe not vintage Star Wars figures. I'm from Norway, so I hope you understood my English grammar. Have a great autumn. And thanks a lot, Liz Marty Joe, and your English is perfect. Trust me, I wish they taught us multiple languages like they do in Norway. All my Norwegian friends know an average of like 3 different languages, and I think that's amazing. And it broadens your view of the world, in my opinion. That being said, I know 2 languages. I know English. I would hope to say very well. I know Spanish. I can basically get myself out of trouble when I go down to Mexico, but I don't get in trouble because I know enough Spanish not to get in trouble. That being said, the price of a figure will always hold its own without an accessory, right? Pairing it with a vintage accessory that was authentic, made in its production run, will obviously command more money together. Like I said, once you pair that solo figure with its authentic accessory. If you customize a figure with what you said, like custom capes, etc., that does have a value for a niche population of vintage collectors. And depending on the quality and the artistry of the custom, yes, I would see that being desirable. So it's like if Pablo Picasso painted a vintage figure, that figure would probably go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. If I painted it, I probably couldn't give it away for 10 cents. But to answer your question about pairing a vintage figure with a reproduction item, like I said, a figure on its own will have its value based on condition. And then let's say you pair a vintage 1978 Stormtrooper with an Imperial Blaster that was made in 2023 and looks like the real deal, but it's just made out of resin. That may look great, but by feeling it and knowing where the ejection point mold is, you can tell that it's repro. And let's say that you paid $5 for it. That would not increase the value of the figure. If you paid $5 for that and the figure costs $38, well, then you can probably sell it for $43 plus shipping and tax. And I hope that answers your question. DJ asks, what is your thoughts on the gatekeeper collectors out there that say stuff like, if you collect repro items or figures, you do not deserve to collect these figures or playsets? That is a great question, DJ. And the good thing about collecting is that there are no rules. So if you don't like what somebody's saying, just stop paying attention to them. If they are a group, then I guess that group isn't for you. And you have a choice not to associate with that sect. And I don't like telling anybody how to collect. It may seem like I'm telling you how to collect, but really, I'm showing you how I collect and I'm giving you my opinions. But my opinions are based on research and hours and hours and hours of collecting information for you to make your own decisions. That's where I like to come from. And since I am a vintage collector who chooses not to collect repro, here's where I draw the line with people who choose to collect repro. When people try to sell me items knowing that an item is a reproduction, that's called fraud. And that's where I have a problem with reproduction and people who deal in reproduction items. And reproduction is out there. It exists. And it allows people to complete a collection for a lot cheaper than an authentic collection. But at the end of the day, in my eyes, if it's not authentic, it's not for me. And it wouldn't make my collection fun to collect. Because for me, it's a hunt. It's a vintage toy hunt. That's like Indiana Jones hunting for the Ark of the Covenant, seeing a picture of it and having some artisan make an exact replica and then saying, boom, I'm done. I know that analogy in comparison is a stretch, but that's how it feels for me. For me, it's all about the hunt. For me, it's all about the hobby. For me, it's all about the research, saving my money to invest in my collection. And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the hobby. I don't care if any of those figures tomorrow are worth $0. To me, they're worth $1 million. So collecting authentic for me is about the fun of the hunt and the love of the hobby. So that's my thoughts on that, but they are my thoughts and my thoughts alone. So for anybody that would be a gatekeeper for me, I really don't give a crap what anybody says. I really don't. No one tells me how to collect, and no one tells me how to enjoy this hobby. Troy asks, why did Kenner put out the Collector Series line only to do 3? Dewback, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and Landspeeder. You would think maybe they would have done more. And yes, they easily could have done this for the X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon, but why didn't they? And I think to answer that, we have to know when the Collector's Edition boxes were made and for what reason. All 3 of the Collector's Edition toys in the Dewback, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and the Landspeeder, those Collector Edition boxes, they were issued in 1984. The Dewback was first released in 1979, Vader's TIE Fighter in 1979, and the Landspeeder in 1978. When those items were re-released in 1984, the only things to get updated to make them a collector's edition was the box. So it was a marketing ploy by Kenner to move more units, And maybe those items were in surplus and they couldn't move them from the warehouses. So that was a great way to get more orders in by retail outlets. And since the X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon were two ships that sold so well that there was no reason to modify the marketing or packaging to the collector's edition. That makes the most sense to me as why only those 3 items got chosen in 1984 to apply the collector's edition marketing ploy to. And I did research that, so out of that research, that is my most educated guesstimate that I can tell you. What is my opinion on Stan Solo? I think the Leia I have is a Stan Solo, but it was gifted to me. I didn't buy it, so I can't comment on the buying experience. I think that figure is a very well-made figure. So if Stan Solo did indeed make it, Stan, that's awesome. Is his name Stan? I don't know. Other than that, the only experience I have with a Stan Solo was when I was trying to buy an authentic blue snaggletooth, and the collector sent me pictures where the country of origin stamp should have been on the figure, and there was an SS stamp, and I didn't know what SS meant at that time. And at least he sent me that picture. Maybe he didn't know that it wasn't an authentic line, so I really can't fault the seller because he gave me a picture, so I'm guessing that he didn't know. But this is where the problem is that people who do not know this, do not know that this is an authentic one. If I was just buying this figure for a friend of mine or buying this figure for a girlfriend or whatever, and somebody said, yeah, this is authentic, and it wasn't, and I spent $450 on a figure that should cost me $50, that's why I don't like this whole paradox of people selling reproduction figures and passing them off as authentic and charging so much money for it. It really rips people off. So I would collect a fan-made item like a Stan Solo if Kenner never made it. But I wouldn't collect any fan-made figure or reproduction figure if Kenner made it in the line because it goes against my joy of the hobby, like I said earlier. So I know that people make an exact replica of the blue snaggletooth. I know that they make an exact replica of the yak face. Even the yak face that just came out in the retro line, I have no interest in that. And while I get it that it's less expensive to buy those than the real deal, and a lot of people have to do that to complete their collection, and it's not like I'm made of money, I do have to save my money and put away money for my collection. So I just can't throw money at it and buy every figure that I want, or else I would have a graded Vlix tomorrow. I think that whole experience of me finding out that somebody was trying to sell me a vintage figure, and pass it off as the real deal when it wasn't, that really put a bad taste in my mouth. And maybe the seller didn't know. I did let that seller know that what he had was a Stan Solo and not the real deal. I think I may have gotten a my bad or something like that, and that was it. I didn't really continue that conversation. I did let other people know that I had caught that seller doing that, whether it was intentional or not intentional. People have to look out for that. And if you're in a Facebook group and you do see that happening, and a lot of the times it happens in the DMs and the messages that nobody else sees, I think it's great to report that. Because if this seller is selling a lot of toys, which this seller was, it lets people know that this person does not know his vintage figures that well. Be very, very wary doing business with this person. That's just fraud in my opinion. So thank you to everybody who sent in questions. And for those of you who sent in questions and I did not get to them, I am going to get to your questions very soon on a future episode. If you do have questions that you want me to answer and research for you, just leave those down there in the comments. And please make sure to visit all my links in my description. That supports this channel greatly. Those are affiliate links, so when you do click on that, buy something, it does support the channel greatly, and it costs you nothing. And if you want to join my Patreon community, there are amazing perks, and you can join for as low as $2.50. Or if you want to keep your support right here on YouTube and join my membership program, there are amazing perks as well, and you can join for as low as 99 cents. And I thank everyone who supports my channel, even by liking and subscribing to this video. Your support means a great deal to me. And please check out these videos that are on the screen right now. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time.
If you're new to the channel, check out the welcome video, or just check out the next episode. And please subscribe if you want to follow the journey. And remember, there is no shame in being a Padawan.